They should have just made them heel. How often have you heard that be the master booking plan of your friends and fellow wrestling fans, like it's some sort of secret genius escape hatch to instantly make a dull babyface great? Now, to be honest, it's not like this isn't a tried and true method for promotions, because time and time again we've seen bland become brilliant with just a bit of the bastard thrown into the mix. Plus, when you speak to wrestlers after their time in the ring, more often than not, they'll speak about relishing their times as the top big bads of their companies. After all, being loved is a lot harder than being hated, trust us. We know all too well on that one. And on top of it all, you can make some serious money. People are still wearing NWO t-shirts, and you think that this would be the case if that group was a babyface faction? Not a chance. And yet, at the end of the day, you can't have everyone be assholes the entire time, otherwise how do you ever pick good against evil? You have to have your faces, and there are some on the WWE roster that should be kept away from the dark side at all costs. So with this in mind, I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 WWE superstars that should never turn heel. Number 10. Xavier Woods. Xavier Woods is a gift to the WWE, plain and simple, and not just because of how fantastic he is as the central hub of the New Day. The former NXT star is also an ideas machine, and managed to save the entire group from failure in a way that not even Vince could have foreseen. He wanted the group to be clap-happy, smiling idiots in basically the same way that he books all of his baby faces, and yet Xavier knew that this would not sit well with the fans, and so he almost spearheaded the group turning heel amidst the New Day sucks movement, just so that he could use this to build popularity and turn the group mega face once more. He dipped his toe into the heel pool only to bring himself and his friends to a level of popularity that honestly has not been matched anywhere else on the card. And as such, the WWE would be idiots to turn Xavier, or for that matter any of the New Day, heel again, because the sheer amount of Goodwill merch money that they're making at the moment should scream to anyone that they are the most popular stable in the entire company, in a perfect position as is. Each member is having genuine fun. Each member loves their work, and you can tell, so why fix something that isn't broken? Number 9. Ricochet. Now, I know in the comics that Superman turning on his friends is usually a license to print money, but the same can't be said of the real-life superhero should the WWE ever look to make him do his flippy shit on being a face and turn heel. Now, while it might be tempting to have a man as athletic as Ricochet afford a chance to flex for evil, it would be a terrible, terrible move. Namely because, and I'm not trying to be harsh here, Ricochet's skills aren't mic-based, which a lot of heel wrestlers need. Ricochet is a man who is able to let his actions do the talking for him. Look at that silent flip out of the ring to address Velveteen Dream. That spoke volumes without saying a bloody word. He's also an incredible high flyer, and by turning himself heel, he'd have to ground himself rather than focus on crowd-popping spots. And this, quite honestly, would rob him of the traits that made him such a perfect signing in the first place. Number 8. Keith Lee. Facing off with Roman Reigns in the closing moments of an improbably excellent Raw vs SmackDown vs NXT 15-man Survivor Series match was presumably the moment that Vince McMahon saw what many others had seen years ago, that Lee is anything and everything to any and every fan. This includes potentially being a bastard, of course, but why would the WWE waste moments when there's still so many to make? Simply put, he is captivating, and his arsenal of moves is like watching a bomb go off for how powerful they are. Lee pouncing Adam Cole into the 5th row of Full Sail University would have been wrestling's meme of 2019 had it not been for just a bit of the bubbly. And this feat of physicality is far from an isolated incident. Lee's big battles are littered with these, along with a host of spots asking for his own body to move in ways a frame of his size really shouldn't be able to. He's exactly as limitless as his persona suggests, and a heel turn would handcuff the heights to which he could soar. Number 7. Edge. The rated R superstar's return at the 2020 Royal Rumble was proof that even in the most cynical of times, over is over, and bona fide stars will always be over. But unfortunately, the audience, who were utterly gripped by the prospect of an old favourite returning to the full-time grind, had barely retaken their seats before Randy Orton stole the chair from underneath them and used it to pulverise his old partner's head. This instantly iconic Monday Night Raw scene was reason enough to never have the multi-time world champion embrace the dark side again. He was sympathetic to the extreme, and while he did make his name being a bastard before his career-ending injury, all of that heat had suddenly evaporated. He's a warhorse and a battle-worn hero regardless of how regular his appearances are now that he has made a comeback. To lose this audience in the same way the company did with Daniel Bryan in mid-2018 would be to risk losing the intrinsic value of this story and the man himself. Number 6, Natalya. The long-tenured women's division star was a heel as recently as 2018, but in light of some of the significant events in her life since that point, a return to the dark side feels quite wasteful. WWE went ultra dark following Jim Neidhart's death, but somehow found a light at the end of the tunnel. Printing a picture of the anvil onto a table in order for the Riot Squad to have the most ghoulish of props was the sort of sleep-deprived Vince McMahon idea that somebody probably should have stopped, but nobody had the guts to do so. Only a deep-rooted respect large swathes of the audience had for the stalwart Natalya carried this over the line, much in the same way that it did for mini-programs against Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch and Lacey Evans in what turned out to be an underrated 2019 for the Hart family dungeon graduate. The occasional Divas of Doom reunions with Beth Phoenix only further this sentiment. There's neither need nor place for such a figure on the heel side of the fence, simply put. Number 5, Johnny Gargano. So here's the thing, at the current time of recording, Gargano is a heel. However, he's a very specific heel. He's only embracing the dark side because of the amount of turmoil that Tommaso Ciampa has put him through. He is, in essence, a heel for an audience of one. Now that's important because while it totally works while beefing up their rivalry, which I would happily watch until the end of time, it has to end at some point, and the bigger brands will likely split them up once again. On the main roster, it's hard to see him as anything other than a face, and you want to know why? Because he's so beloved by the NXT fans and sells so much merch that it would be such a shot to the foot for him to try and be heel on Raw or SmackDown. Plus, while he's excellent at being nasty and guttural with Tommaso, this doesn't feel legitimate when applied to anyone else. He's a talent that wins grueling battles by the skin of his teeth, where he can showcase some truly impressive technical wrestling, and applying natural heel logic like cheating to win and distractions really would hamper the legacy that he's built in NXT. So yes, he's a good heel, but he's an outstanding face, and Vince would be wise to keep things as such. Number 4, Bayley. Well, never again anyway. I mean, here we are with another heel that simply shouldn't be. And don't get me wrong, I am a huge fan of Bayley, having seen the very beginnings of the character's formation in NXT. The landscape-shifting encounters that she had on the brand with her 4 horsewoman comrades and many others, and how she managed to capture the hearts of audiences around the globe with her positive attitude that was backed up by pure grit. And yet, that 2016 call-up really put the brakes on her and arguably sought to damage everything that she built in NXT. Her 2019 heel turn was powerful in execution, but also represented the peak from which, again, it was all downhill from. She took the axe quite literally to her old character, but while she's got a new style, theme, and haircut, there's not been much character development since. She's held the belt for yonks, and yet the heat that she's drawn has been lukewarm at best. She's felt like a third wheel in her own storyline. She's looked uncomfortable delivering snarky sound bites, and quite frankly, she's not as intimidating as the WWE wants her to be. Fingers crossed we'll see her back on the face team soon, and with a genuine rather than forced smile on her own. Number 3, Samoa Joe. The Samoan submission machine hadn't ever been a babyface on the main roster until a recent return from injury, and with seemingly less and less time remaining on his career clock, the company would do well to simply steer into those Joe chants one last time. As a babyface, Samoa Joe can claim 50% of the record pay-per-view draw TNA achieved in 2008 when he finally dethroned heel champion Kurt Angle in a lockdown main event that was worthy of a place on the excellent WrestleMania card that took place just weeks before it. Time in the role in NXT wasn't quite as kind to the tenured star, but Joe eventually found enough support from the Full Sail faithful to give his signposted turn on Finn Balor more than enough gravitas to inform their lengthy and evocative headline series. A 2020 Monday Night Raw rebadge as a baddie has been derailed by injuries, but he should give whatever he's got left to being a brave babyface destroyer on the red brand. A promo polymath, he's not the sort of pushed prospect to lose a crowd, and in this era, that's quite possibly his most bankable attribute. Number 2, John Cena. In his absence from the full-time roster, years of calls for John Cena to turn his back on the audience have finally begun to subside. But my God, did it take a while, seeing as you couldn't not wish for the turn after seeing his face literally everywhere. At WrestleMania 35, Cena dusted off his Doctor of Thugonomics persona, much to the overt joy of an exhausted New Jersey crowd. Now, this was far from just ruthless aggression, nostalgia, and forming the cheer. People were genuinely pleased to see a star of his magnitude turn up to rattle the out of Elias in something far more satisfying than just a 6-minute squash. But to make him a villain now after holding off all this time would be just so Vince McMahon that it's almost likely. But that doesn't mean that he should. Here's hoping that he trusts the same instincts that stopped him from doing just that for well over a decade. And number 1, Roman Reigns. The big dog didn't deserve the smattering of boos that he received at WrestleMania 35, but contrary to how tone-deaf the company have been with Roman Reigns' character in the past, he's been kept clear of anything resembling the top of the card ever since, and this was clearly by design. Desperate to get him ready to be the face of the organization once again after recovering from a devastating leukemia diagnosis, WWE had him work several mid-card programs against the likes of Drew McIntyre and Daniel Bryan respectively. Now, these were little more than believable distractions between his return and the WrestleMania 36 card, but they worked. Ratings have stabilized for SmackDown on Fox, suggesting that he might be the antidote to the numbers poison that once was Baron Corbin, and saddled with endless rematches and at least 2 instances of dog food being lathered over the both of them, the billion-dollar show has started to earn the money in spite of the aesthetic. This is just another best-case scenario for a character once thought destroyed and a man with health problems initially considered fatal. To put it bluntly, he must never be the bad guy again. And there we go, those were 10 WWE superstars that should never turn heel. I hope that you enjoyed that, my friends, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. If you want to chat about wrestling, video games, films, comics, and anything else, you can do so over on Twitter with myself at RetroJ with a 0. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. We detailed today about wrestlers who should never ever walk the dark side, about people who should always remain the good guys in spite of overwhelming odds. And I hope that you can apply that life lesson to yourself in some form, about being kind to yourself, both mentally and physically, treating yourself with respect, because you are not a villain to yourself, and nor should you ever be. It can be difficult sometimes, especially with the emotional pressures going on in society at the moment, but just remember, you are not alone. And if you want to speak to people like friends, families, professionals in the support industry, all of those people care about you and want you to do well. So don't be a villain to yourself. Go out there and be the absolute ledge that I know you are. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.